Okay, we are live right now.
Okay.
Okay, we are live right now.
Okay.
Okay, permit me to welcome everyone. Live session. We are live right now.
Okay. Collington.
Yeah, let me go ahead.
Permit me to welcome everyone. Live session. We are live right now.
Okay. Collington.
Yeah, let me go ahead.
Permit me to welcome everyone. Okay, yes, I can be echoing, but if that is not interfering, I would like to welcome everyone to this live session. To welcome everyone.
Oh my goodness.
Echoing, but if that is not interfering,
It's interfering.
I would like to welcome everyone to this live session. To welcome everyone. Echoing, but if that is not interfering,
It's interfering.
I would like to welcome everyone to this. Okay, Memona, you are using your
I'm
phone
sorry I
and
had
your
to stop
laptop
that
very
because
close
it
to
was
you.
echoing.
Your phone and your laptop are close to you, right?
Yeah. So my phone shouldn't be next to me.
Yeah, they are both
So
inter-
pause your laptop and your phone.
Let me just. I've turned off my phone. So let's do this again.
Okay, permit me to welcome everyone to this live session. And we are glad to have everyone right here on board this program, Councilorpreneurship Virtual Hangouts. Uh, Permit me to recognize the presence of a mother, mentor, a leader in the field of counseling, Professor Ochete Cecilia Kobia, who has actually joined this meeting. And also we have Elibert, our guest, one of our guests for today, Kendra, all the way from Canada, joining us for this session. We're glad to have you. And then we have Memona Stevens, we have Aisha Muhammad Goni, we have Dr. Cletus John Akaba, we have Obeta Edith Obianuju, we have Osita, we have Tolorun Leke, Agbaje Aishat, Ambassador Priscilla, we have Anne, we have Augustine Oshu, we have Coach Collington, we have Princess Vera Ape, we have Dr. Stella Gweze, we have Mr. Victor O'Day, and then we have Anita Ifidon. Right away, we would like to welcome every one of us to this meeting, and we know that in the course of this meeting, some other people will be joining us. But a bit of a background on what we're trying to do with Councilorpreneurship Virtual Hangout. Councilorpreneurship Virtual Hangout is more of advocacy, creating awareness about counseling in Africa and beyond, and also helping counselors who have been trained in the field of counseling, psychology, social work, to actually understand and appreciate the fact that there is need for counseling practice in Africa. So it's not enough to have the degree. The necessity in our society where we have mental health challenges calls for professionals to go into practice so that the numerous challenges that are developing our society can be addressed by professionals who have been trained. I always say that nature above vacuum, where professionals are not in the field and there are needs for professionals, definitely you are going to have people come on board to fill in the vacuum. And that is what has been happening in the industry across Africa over the years. But with many advocacy groups coming together, with many professionals coming together to advocate for professional practice of counseling, therapy, social work, and psychology, and other helping profession in Africa, we are sure that in few years from now, we have professionals who are ready. So once again, since we're starting afresh, I want to welcome every one of us to this meeting. And in the course of the meeting, when we have the opportunity to speak, please let's do well to also identify ourselves. Like I can already see here, we have Professor Otete Cecilia Okobia, we have Memuna Stevens, we have Victor Ode, we have Agbaje Aishat, we have Aisha Muhammad Goni, we have Ambassador Priscilla, we have Anne, we have Augustine Yoshi, Cletus John Kaba, Dallas, okay, we can't get that. Kendra Mills with us, and everyone joining us. In the course of this session, we have opportunity to recognize more people as we join. But a bit of background on what we're trying to do in Counselorpreneurship Virtual Hangouts. Like everyone who has been on this hangout, we come to identify, despite the value that we are giving on this platform, it is not a paid program because our focus is basically on more awareness, more advocacy, and then more capacity building for practitioners or professionals to actually prepare themselves to go into practice. So the topical issues that we focus on this session is more of creating more awareness, creating more advocacy, and identifying areas that professionals will need capacity building, whether before going into practice or while in practice already. So once again, welcome everyone to today's session. Without wasting time, we are going to have a presentation session. Thereafter, we are going to have the opportunity of interacting based on the topic that we have before us. So quickly we'll get to business so that the time that we have before us is judiciously utilized. We have the singular honor of having Kendra Lee Mills all the way from Canada, and she has a wide range of experience in the field of therapy practice, and she loves to work internationally, and her practice has clients across the world, and here she is today to share with us on the topic, the place of traversing culture in the growth of therapy practice, and then looking at the way forward. And also to guide in this discussion, we have the able presence of a mother, a mentor, Professor Cecilia Otete Okobia. So I will urge every one of us to listen in, to pay rapt attention. Let's try and be part of the session. And then in the course of the session or after the session, if there are questions, we're all going to interact. And if we have any area of clarification, we're all here to learn together. So everyone on this call, we are all co-learners. So let's put on our learning cap, our thinking cap, and whatever question that comes to mind, let's be open to ask the question. So once again, you're welcome. So Kendra Mills, we're going to have you on the floor to share with us on the topic before us from the dimension that I'm sure that you are prepared to share with us. Thereafter, we interact together. So you have the floor, Kendra Mills.
Okay, thank you. Greetings, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody or see everyone's pictures. My name is Kendra Mills. Before I start, I'm gonna do what we traditionally do here, which is a land acknowledgement and then an Afro land acknowledgement as well, just because this is how we start our meetings here, just to acknowledge where we're at. So right now, I'm actually in the city of Burlington. Burlington, as we know it today, is rich history in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis. Our lands are spanning from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and are steeped in Indigenous history. The territory is mutually covered by the dish with one spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and the other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit. Okay, and now I'm just going to do an Afro land acknowledgement, and this is for people from the diaspora like myself. I'll explain that later. Okay, so as people of African descent, we offer this land recognition and solidarity with the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions towards decolonization. We acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that was never meant to be owned. We recognize that most of the land that was entrusted to the Indigenous peoples was in some cases shared by choice, but all too often taken by force. We recognize the historical colonialism and the ongoing colonialism that has led to the present day situation, where land acknowledgements are offered in place of land. As people of African descent, many of us have come here by choice, while many are here as a result of historical force. We acknowledge the complexities where we were promised land that was never given by those who it was never to give. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us. We express deep gratitude to its Indigenous peoples and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. So that's the first part of my introduction, okay? And the reason it's important to do that is because there's a large history. Colonialism touched everywhere in the world, right? Including Canada. And it's really important for Indigenous folks, but also for us, for me as a diasporic person, to acknowledge that. This is how we start our meetings. So I'm Kendra. You're gonna be like, what is up with this girl? Why is she? I'm Kendra, I'm a social worker. I've been around doing social work since I was, I don't know, about 24. I don't wanna date myself, but I've been in the field for a few years, maybe a couple decades. Don't tell anybody. My passion has always been for people since I was a little child. My roots. So social work has been something that I've always wondered, why do some people have, why do some people not? Why does Canada have this? Why do my family in Jamaica not have certain things, or lights go out and we have light all the time? I've always questioned, right? Like what is going on here, right? Why is there food in some places and not in others? So this has been like my passion since I was a little girl. I've always been asking questions, trying to find out. I am, so many people I know we're on, I'm mixed. My father's Jamaican, Afro-Jamaican. My mom is Scottish, she's of Scottish descent. And I know for many people, when we visited Sierra Leone, they called my son the Canadian government's picnic, which is interesting because we use the same word in Jamaica for children. But I know that he was very annoyed because a lot of his cousins knew that he was a foreigner, and he's like, but I'm from here too, mommy. We just don't know from where, right? So I identify as a Black woman, not just because that's what I choose, but that's because who I am and who my ancestors are. In my family, that's also important because representation matters, right? Representation really matters. A lot of my clients who come to me in my practice are from all over, right? But the majority of my clients are young men and women from the Caribbean or from the continent, okay? And then a lot of Indigenous folks come and see me as well from Canada. So that's a little bit who I am. The other important things, I'm a mom, I'm a mother, okay? I'm an aunt, I'm a adopted sister. I'm an only child. You could judge me if you want, but I've learned how to share, I promise you. And I've gone to school for child and youth work and social work. I've worked in a whole bunch of different places in Ontario, in the world, really, in Trinidad and Tobago as well. There's a strong connection actually between Trinidad and Tobago and Nigeria. Both countries have oil, and I met when I was in Nigeria, or when I was in Trinidad, sorry. There's a lot of Nigerians there because of the business. But I've worked there as well. And that was me having to go into a completely different culture, because just because I'm from the Caribbean, right? Trinidad and Jamaica have two very distinct cultures, but they share commonalities, but there's also a lot of differences. So I'm saying all of this, not to, I don't want to like big up myself, but I'm just trying to explain to folks what it actually takes, to kind of have your own practice and to kind of get in there with people, right? To get in there with people, to like dig deep with folks and gain trust, you know? Because that's a lot of what. Pardon?
Hello, yeah, if you can be a bit slower so that those of us in Africa can get you clearer.
Okay, yeah, no problem. No problem. I apologize. I'm gonna make a joke now, and it's a joke that I made in Trinidad a lot too. And it's, I understand that like I have a very thick Canadian accent, right? And so I will go slower. If there's words I say that people don't know, or if I mumble, please feel free in the chat, interrupt me and let me know, okay? So that I can kind of slow down and repeat myself and explain it further, because I want this to be useful for everybody.
That's cool, that's cool.
All right, thank you, Stanley. So when we were talking about how traversing cultures, right? Stanley, you might laugh, but like we had to look up. I was like, traverse, what is that? What does that mean? And Mamuna, I'm gonna out you too right now, because Mamuna and I were both looking it up. What does that even mean, to traverse cultures, right? The definition we kind of came up with was that it means to kind of get into and work with people who are from various cultures, right? Within our communities, within our countries, within our global community, right? I know that it's important because we're all here today on this platform called Zoom, but this is also an opportunity because a lot of therapy can happen this way. So you can interact with people from different cultures within your community or from outside. And I know that Nigeria has a lot. I'm speaking a lot about Nigeria because I've realized, Mamuna, I asked before I came on, who's here? She said it's mostly Nigerians and then some Sierra Leoneans. So I know that like Nigeria is the most populous country and has the largest democracy. I know some people might argue that. I know there's a lot of political stuff going on, but we're not going to get into that. And with more than 300 ethnic groups, right? And 500 languages and many distinct religious and regional differences. The cultural diversity of Nigeria is astounding. It's amazing, right? But that also brings with it challenges. So I'm sure that there's conflict, or there's ideas, or there's stereotypes, or there's like implicit bias. I don't know if people know, I'm sure people know what that means, but I'll just explain it just because I explain it to everybody. But implicit bias is something that we've kind of like grown up to think. Like, Mamuna, I'm gonna use you for an example just because you're my sister. But like, I might have been grown up to think that somebody with dreadlocks or with a rasta on their head is not a good person, is not a person to be trusted, right? Or they're wayward in their way of thinking. Okay, so that might be something that's a bias that I have about people with locks. It's really not, but it could be, right? So I have to know, okay, what do I really think when I see a beautiful sister with locks? What are those thoughts going on in the back of my head, right? And I have to check myself. We all have to check ourselves all the time, because regardless of where, when I said earlier that colonialism has touched everywhere, the colonizers touched everywhere. There was a race for Africa, just like there was a race for Canada, right? To rob of resources, and it's still going on, I would say, right? So what do we do with that? How do I know that, no, I have to remind myself that Mamuna is a human in front of me who is being, regardless of what is on her head, right? That's one of the ways that we can traverse cultures, right? It's it's one of the ways that part of my work and part of the way that I work with clients is I fearlessly advocate. Okay, so in some of the work that I've done, I've worked for Children's Aid Society, which is through the government, and it helps protect children with families. Our community, though, the African Caribbean Black community, is over-policed in that system and over-represented, right? So within that system, I had to fight barriers to get people to trust me that I wasn't going to take their child away. Okay. 5 years, I didn't apprehend one child. I worked my way around it. Apprehend means bring them to a place of safety. So how do we do that? We advocate, right? Fearlessly advocate in whichever way we can. I know there's a million organizations that Mamouna has worked with in Freetown and beyond, right? That she knows who to go to for what when a client is in need. Okay, just like here in Ontario, I can pick up my phone and call somebody and say, hey, how do we get a hold of, right? So we have to advocate. I say that we do this in front of clients, not just behind clients' back. I say that we do this in front of clients, because when we do that, we're actually helping clients to learn these valuable skills themselves, right? To learn the words that can get people moving, that can get stuff done, right? I know it's different. I know that there's differences, but I think that there's also commonalities in that wherever you go, right? I also want to talk about, like, how do we understand trauma? Oh, Victor? Sorry, I see. Oh, okay, sorry. How do we understand trauma, right? What do we understand about trauma? What do we think about trauma that may have happened to other people, right? What do we think about trauma that's happened to our communities or to ourselves? It's really important that we have a broad understanding of trauma. Everybody experiences trauma. Their reactions to it can be broadly different, and you have to kind of really get to know somebody to find out how that's going to look for them, right? And it can be cultural. There's some people who scream and cry when somebody dies, right? Hi. And there's some people who are silent. I've watched a woman give birth and not make a sound. That was sexual trauma, right? She wasn't able to make a sound. She was afraid she was going to hurt her baby, but she had been taught when you're in pain from a very little girl that you be silent, okay? So we have to understand, what is our understanding of trauma? We want to also understand how there's different, what expectations do we have of certain people? What expectations do we have of certain cultures, right? I'm assuming that, you know, with over 300 ethnic groups, I'm assuming that there's certain groups that think certain ways about other groups. Certain groups that are, I've heard that certain people are very good at business, right? And then certain people are very good at art, right? And certain people are, what do we know, right? What do we know, and what can we relearn? Because we have to remember that culture, there's subcultures, right? So somebody might be a Jamaican. Let me come out of the continent now and go to the Caribbean, right? So the motto in Jamaica is out of many, one people, right? That's our national motto. Somebody could be a Jamaican. They could be a Christian Jamaican. They could be a Muslim Jamaican. They could be a Hindu Jamaican. They could be a Chinese Jamaican, right? And then they could have a subculture. They could be an Indo-Caribbean, right? And that actually matters a lot when you're thinking about the Caribbean, because people from India came through indentured labor, whereas African descendants came through transatlantic slavery. So there's a big thing in the Caribbean between Indo and African Caribbean people. But we have to think about that, right? What are the expectations that we have of people, right? Where how do they experience micro and macroaggressions, right? People know like microaggressions are those little things like, oh, Mamuna, you're so well spoken, right? That's a macroaggression, when in fact, Mamuna and Stanley and probably everybody on the screen has a better vocabulary than I do, because I was schooled here. I know that it's, anyways, but it's a macroaggression when it's a microaggression when it's coming from someone, because it's not a compliment. There's assumptions behind that because Mamuna is a more melanated woman. That's the way that she's a more melanated woman, that she's from Sierra Leone and Canada too. But you know, there's a assumption that she wouldn't be well spoken. Well, why not? It's just like it's just like people with a Jamaican accent. There's an assumption that they wouldn't be well spoken. Everybody does the CXC system. That's a colonial system, right? Only our kids over here, they don't do it, which is interesting in itself. But there's colonial systems that are all over the world, and we don't have to think about we have to think about that when we're thinking about trauma. When I'm having clients, the other thing that we have to do is we have to be involved in the communities we work in. It's really important to be involved somehow in the community so people know you. People know you and they can trust you, right? So they know you're not the one who's going to gossip around everywhere and tell everybody's business. They know if they tell you something that you will do your best to hold that tight and honor their story for them, okay? Because word gets around. When you're building your practice, people know, oh, Kendra, she's that chatty one. She likes to talk everybody's business. No, I don't, right? Or Kendra, I can really trust her. I've told her some things and I've never heard it twice again outside, right? We have to know that some of the systems that we might be working with, here I talked about that I've worked for the government. I work for myself now, but I've worked for the government in the past. Some of the systems, you might be working for the government, you might be working for an NGO, you might be working for a church organization. These are well-respected systems. It doesn't mean that they're always doing well-respected practice, okay? So we have to know the systems that we were working in. And if there are times that they failed the communities, we have to be transparent and honest about that with our clients. I know that this organization might have really messed up. I'm acknowledging that. I'm not going to do that to you. And it's going to take time for me to build trust so that you can believe me with that, right? It's really important. I ask people to always be honest with me, as honest as they can be, okay? I understand that it takes various amount of times to earn trust. I always leave room for the story to change, okay? And I don't think that someone's a liar. You're a liar. No, I don't think that. I just know that they're taking the time that they need to trust me. And that though, we have to trust ourselves, right? We have to know our limits and we have to know ourselves. And that's how we're gonna know, because people won't come to us and they won't pay you. They won't honor you with their story if they're not sure that you're a safe person, right? They won't. I won't. Therapy should feel like jeans with stretch. I tell all my clients that. I had to grow up in a time where I used to have a small waist. We won't talk about that anymore. But the jeans didn't have any stretch when I was growing up, right? Now I won't wear a pair of jeans that doesn't have stretch. I tell clients I should fit like a pair of jeans. And if I don't, please fire me, because I want them to be comfortable, right? I want people to, like, the other thing to do is to actually make networks. So I love the fact that this is a huge network. Stanley, you've done a great thing. And whoever else is involved, I don't want to, there's other people involved, but Stanley, you've done a great thing in bringing all of these counselors together, because that's another way that you that you can really traverse the cultures, right? You can get into different cultures. You can know that maybe Stanley is the better counselor for this particular person over Kendra, or maybe Mamuna's the better counselor for this particular person over Stanley, right? That is how you have to build your network among people, so you're really getting people the help that they need, right? It's really important to always be genuine, okay? You can't be fake, and people can smell it. They can smell if I'm trying to act like Mamuna, or if I'm just being my crazy self, right? They know it. So you need to really be genuine and being self-aware, right? Being self-aware of how you present. Also admitting when you're unsure of how something works in an individual's family or community, right? You might not know the cultures and customs of somebody else. You can respectfully ask in a non-judgmental way, right? You can respectfully inquire. And it's also learning, right? Like, we're all here to be together on this earth, on this beautiful earth that's been gifted to us, right? It's learning about different people. But ask so that you're being respectful to your client, okay? I think that the other thing is that we've talked about a little bit about advocacy, but you got to advocate with every system that's involved in people's lives, and they need to see you do it, okay? I know there's a big issue right now with the 2S LGBTQ plus community, okay? And it's global, right? Right now is our Pride Parade in Toronto, which is celebrating the lesbian, gay, non-binary, bisexual, transgendered, queer and questioning individuals, okay? We're gonna have clients, because believe me, there's secret beach parties that are happening in Sierra Leone. There's secret parties that are happening in Nigeria. There's secret parties that are happening all over the place, where people who like people of the same gender are gathering, okay? And I know that there's some very strong beliefs within, so I forgot to identify as a Christian. I also identify as a Christian, but I know that there's some strong beliefs in Christianity and in Islam, okay? But what I say, and I was talking to Mamuna about this, I was like, I hope I don't shock too many people. The last perfect man, he died on the cross a few thousand years ago, right? And I say that because sometimes, yeah, and I say that because my grandma used to tell me that I'm nobody to judge, and to leave that judgment to God. Okay, so I've actually had a client, and it's interesting because I had a client who, she was a Jamaican woman. Okay, she was an older Jamaican woman, so she's older than me, and she has 3 boys, 3 children, but she came to the realization along her journey that she really doesn't like men, right? And I wasn't quite sure. She tested me for a long time, and she called me her Mariah Carey counselor. Which I don't think I look like Mariah Carey. I think she looks like a duck, but that's besides the point. But she tested me for a long time to see if I'd be a safe person for her to come out to, for her to tell me that she likes women. And I knew that it was coming. And I actually called Mamuna, right? I used my own network. And I called Mamuna and I said, hey, I have this client and I just wanted to consult with you for a minute. I just don't know where to go. I know she's struggling. I know she's whichever. She's struggling with her identity. And Mamuna gave me the best piece of advice. She said, Kendra, do what you do with every client and help her to accept herself. Help her on that journey of acceptance of self, right? Radical acceptance of self. And so I always listen to my, well, she's not my elder sister. I'm her. Anyways, I always listen to Mamuna. I listen to my trusted friends, right? And I did that in session. And we got this woman through, you know, the judgment, the shame, even the guilt, right? And I did it very carefully, right? I wasn't trying to be blasphemous or anything like that. We did it very carefully because she too identified as a Christian, right? But we talked about love and forgiveness and what that looks like. This woman is very happy now with herself and has actually become even more successful, right? I don't want to say too much because you might run into her. You never know, right? But I don't want to say too much because she's working on some higher education, and so you might actually run into her. But I just want to let you know that we can help clients even if we don't sit with their identity. I'm a cisgendered woman, okay? That means that I do, yeah. So that means that I identify as a woman. I do interact with men. I like men, right? Most of them, some of them, anyways. So that means that's my sexuality and that's my identity. I was also clear with the client about that, okay? But I said there's no judgment, right? Because I'm not here to judge. Remember, the last perfect man died on the cross a long time ago. So that is one of the things that we have to really also check ourselves. I know that there's different laws in various countries, and there's different ways in which people believe, and different things people believe are right or wrong, right? But in therapy, we really have to be that non-judgmental individual. That's how we're going to traverse cultures. And news will spread, okay? News will spread. Some of the most important work that I do here in Ontario and in Canada, I should say, is I work with young girls who have been sexually exploited or human trafficked, okay? Some of the work that this has been a passion. I've been exposed since I was 13 to friends who were exploited. But my name as Kendra, the cool counselor, has gotten out throughout the community to the point where I'm getting referrals from throughout Canada for girls who want to talk to me, who are exiting the game, exiting human trafficking, or who are in it but trying to seek help to get out. Here we're lucky, the government funds that counseling for girls, right? I also do some training for the province where we teach people how to work with kids who are trafficked, right? But what I really want to talk about is, though, how do you traverse that culture? How do you get, Stanley, I'm using your word like over and over and over again, because there is a different culture within human trafficking. There's within the game of pimps or traffickers, right? And so you also have to get through that culture and let people know that you're a safe person, that you can be trusted, but that you get a little bit. I don't have to have been a survivor. I have many survivor friends, right? But they know that Kendra is somebody who they can trust and talk to, and who's not going to ask questions out of curiosity. You can ask questions for information for yourself, but there's certain questions where think about kids who have been trafficked or young girls who have been trafficked. People sometimes ask questions out of their own curiosity, which can be re-traumatizing and re-victimizing, right? I never ask my clients what they did with a client. I never ask my client about any acts or anything like that, because there's no therapeutic benefit for that, right? I'm not doing a forensic interview with them to try to charge them. The police have already asked certain things that they needed to know. I'm not doing that with them. If they want to tell me, I listen. And sometimes I do want to cry when I hear these stories. This is when I go to my own clinical therapist afterwards and have a session, right? Because we all need somebody. As helpers in this field, we also need to have somebody who we go to Here we pay for clinical therapy, clinical supervision, we call it, right? But we need somebody to go to kind of debrief and get those things off of our chest. It makes me be able to come with a full cup tomorrow. I don't go every day though, don't worry. I don't go every day. Usually about once a month. And write down things as we go. So I know, wow, I was like, I'm only gonna talk for 15 minutes. Here we are, I'm taking up a lot of time. So I just have a couple more things to say when it comes to how to traverse cultures. Allow venting sessions to happen. Allow your clients to tell you about their frustrations with the systems, the government, the church, the NGO they're involved with, the whoever. Allow them to vent and talk about that, right? And then bring them back and tell them how you're working with them as an individual, right? And you're gonna try to do things a little bit differently. Talk about validate your clients' feelings and emotions, right? That's gonna help you. Even if you don't know, they're gonna still come back to you, right? We have to also understand the importance of wellness. So wellness for ourselves, but also wellness for our profession, right? So normally, okay, how do I say this? Give me one sec. So I want to, part of my identity is that I'm an independent parent. Unexpectedly, for all those who might hold judgment against single moms, I'm an independent parent. Nobody is funding me to do social work. Nobody is funding me to be a counselor, okay? Some people might have that, but a lot of us don't, right? A lot of people don't. So we have to understand too that our time is valuable and is a commodity. So how do we get the government, the NGOs, the churches to understand that counseling and therapy should be a paid resource, right? Here, where I am right now, they've gotten it. The stigma is decreased. It's taken a long time though, and we've had corporate sponsorships, we've had this, we've had that, like different things. But I think that this is something, and I know Mamuna and Stanley and I have talked about a little bit about this. This is also something that needs to come to West Africa as a whole. How to get these organizations that are getting millions of dollars to fund you folks so that you can give the best service that you can to other people and get the best training. So that's my little talk that took a lot longer than I thought. I'm sorry for how to traverse cultures. I hope that it gave you some new insight. If there's anything that you want to ask or whichever, when I'm here for the whole time. I'm hanging out with you folks tonight. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Kendra. That's actually wonderful. When you started, I was trying to get it clear from what you were saying because you're a bit fast. But as you went into your session fully, you got clearer because you were able to communicate clearer, and I was able to get more of what you were saying. And looking at your background as an Afro-Jamaican, and also you have a connection with Canada and US, and your accent is Canadian accent. Obviously, in your personal and your professional life, you traverse cultures because you're able to relate with Africans, you're able to relate with the Caribbeans, you're able to relate with the West, so across cultures, and your client base is also across culture. And from what I got from what you were saying, you talked about the importance of understanding internal and external cultural diversities. That even within a country, there are diversities that exist within that country. And once you go outside of your country to other countries, you are seeing a lot of diversities. And your emphasis, from what I could get, being non-judgmental. I know you repeated that a number of times, and you actually emphasize on the need for us to accept humanity. first of all, irrespective of the color of hair, the color of skin, everything, we have a common identity, which is humanity. And I also got from what you're emphasizing on, he that is well need no physician. So whether there are stereotypes, there are stigmas that are attached to certain things, anyone who appears in therapy is someone who needs to be helped. And I got that very well from you. And you talked about the need to be very genuine and be original and be accessible. I think I got that from all that you were saying. Thank you very much for all that you have shared. Like we said, we are here to interact. Please pardon me if you can't see my face right now. We are here to interact, and people are here who are in practice, who in the course of practicing may have come across certain cultural diversities. As Africans, we owe certain cultures very dear that if you're not careful, you just hear certain things. Before you can call yourself that I'm a professional, you have already reacted and say, ha, how can that happen? And all that. So basically, that's actually what we're here to interact. And we have, we'll keep the lines open. We have open conversation. So anyone who is on this call, who is actually ready to or ask any question or any clarification or any contribution to make to the discussion, we are going to take that. But before we do that, we want to quickly have Professor Otete Cecilia Okobia, who is a mother on this platform, Counselor Entrepreneurship platform. She's always available. She spent most of her time, active years in Nigeria and traveling across the world. And she had part of her training in the US. And currently she's in the US, having had a service here. And she has also experienced some of these cultural diversities. I don't know. I hope she's still on the call right here. Okay. Professor Otete Cecilia Okobia, is there anything you would like to add to the discussion before we take it further and interact?
Thank you very much, Kedra. We appreciate your talk. As I react to the discussion, I want to just look at the topic and just explain it and then relate it to practicing counseling. The topic says the place of transversing cultures and transforming lives in the growth of therapy practice, the way forward. So she had talked a lot about different cultures, and that is what it is. So when you now talk of transversing cultures, you are talking really about crossing these cultures. You are crossing, you are walking along, across, crossing different cultures. And like she rightly pointed out, even within a country, you can have different cultures. Like in our own country, Nigeria, we know we have different groups of people, of individuals. And those different groups, they have their own cultures. You have the cultists, you have the elderly group, they call them certain groups in the community. Yeah, you have the addicts. You have so many types of people in the society. Those people, they have their different cultures. But when we now talk about these transversing cultures as it relates to counseling, we are also talking about maybe me, a Nigerian, being in a European country or in America doing counseling work. When I do that, I am transversing, I am crossing Africa into European countries or American countries. So I'm crossing, and certainly these countries, they have their cultures, different cultures. The American culture is different from that of Africa. Even generally in Africa, we have different cultures, within the African continent. So when you are talking about traversing cultures, you are talking about how the counselor can actually make use of his experience and transform the lives of his clients. The fact that I'm from a different culture, if I'm working in another culture, will I be able to make this my client to gain? Can the client be assisted to overcome challenges and achieve their own goals, considering the fact that I'm from a different background? The answer is yes. And that is where these transversing cultures come in. So I'm going to, as a counselor, as a practitioner, know my own limitation as a Nigerian or African in America. I have my own limitations. I need to recognize that in this different culture, counseling, even though it is helping individuals to overcome their problems, I have a limitation in effectively helping people in America. So knowing this, I have to now consider these limitations. In what areas? How will the culture in America hamper my work as somebody coming from the African background? So by the time I recognize my limitation, that is being aware. We talked of creating awareness long time ago on this platform. I have to be aware of who I am. Once I am aware of who I am and my limitations, I will be able to help the clients so that his life or her life will be transformed, so that our interactions will be meaningful. And then for me to also be effective, to transverse, I need to learn the cultures of where I am working so that I will be effective. If I know some of the cultural practices there, I will be able to help my clients so that we'll be communicating meaningfully, so that when he or she is talking, I know where he or she is coming from, because I have made efforts to do what? To understand some of their cultural practices. And then also, I need to be sensitive to some of the cultures that they have, so that I'll be able to adapt my professional knowledge to their cultural setting. That way, if I'm able to adapt my professional knowledge to the cultural setting, I will be effective. I will be able to transform lives, So I need to do that. Then I need to also be culturally sensitive to some of the skills, to some of the the counseling approaches, so that in working with the client, I will be cautious so that I do not make a big blunder, so that this person will say, what is she talking about? I don't understand. So it is very necessary for me to understand my skills, the counseling skills, and then also to know the culture of my client, so that I can adapt my knowledge to the culture to be able to help my client. So that is what that topic to me means: transversing, crossing different cultures to be able to make impact in the life of my client, so that he or she can resolve his problems, he can overcome his challenges, and he can achieve his goals, so that he too can grow personally. He can make some developmental stride in his life or her life, so that he can also be strong. He can be so confident that yes, this counselor understands what I was saying, and he or she was able to help me profile solution using the skills that he or she has learned, even though he's from a different culture. Like I said before, the part of the topic says the way forward. What do we really do? How do we do it? So one of the things that we can do is to engage ourselves more in the cultural practices of our clients, and also engage in more training or education or learning of their culture, so that we can be culturally relevant. We need to learn more. We need to be very sensitive. We need to be very intentional. We need to look out for the things that will hamper our counseling interactions in those cultures, so that we can correct them or learn more about them. And then, like I said before, we need to think about adaptation or adopting or adapting. I have learned some counseling theories. I am from a different culture in another culture. So I need to neatly put these things together for me to have meaningful interactions with my client. So I need to do more of that, more learning of adapting skills to the cultures that I'm working, the counseling skills. Then I also need to think about the community. Like Kendra was talking about, there's always a community in any place that we work with. Maybe we want to work with teenage girls, teenagers. We want to work with students. We want to work with behaviorally deficient clients. Whatever that group is a community on its own. So how do we reach them? We need to find out how we can reach them. And basically, when we talk of cultures, we can then look at it from the larger group, in the sense that there are always leaders in a community. There are always organizations in a community. So we can identify these leaders and of these organizations and work with them, so that we can know more of the culture of where we are practicing. That way, we will be culturally relevant. And of course, we are in a digital world. So we need to leverage on the presence of technology. To reach more people, because with technology, we can reach a lot of people more than we can without technology, by use of different technologies, text messages, WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, all those apps that we have. So we can reach a larger group. And by implication, these larger groups, they have their different cultures. So that means that we are transversing different cultures, reaching out to people so that we can equip them with skills to deal with their daily problems. I think that this is what I can add to the topic, so that we can be better culturally sensitive, relevant to our clients. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am, for that wonderful perspective and contribution. It's actually from a very practical dimension, and we appreciate that contribution, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. We are here to interact, and like we said, we have the chat box where you can send whatever question you want to ask And in the course of this interaction, we are also able to look at them together and provide answers. There's one question that was sent in. I don't know if it has been addressed, but I will try and read it out. And also, before I go to that question, I want to ask this. For example, in the US, when you talk about the Democrats and the Republicans, you're talking about the liberals and the conservatives in terms of ideological foundation. So in politics, as much as you want to have votes at a particular time, the people will go towards the Democrats. At a particular time, they will go towards the Republicans. And in doing that, they know that they are going for the liberals and they are going for the conservatives. So I want to ask, in terms of therapy practice, there are certain professionals who, despite being trained to the highest level, when it comes to certain issues, they have their sensibilities that they may not be able to handle certain cases because of their own personal biases. So are we saying that as a professional, it is okay to know your biases and refuse to handle certain cases, or you must not have any reservation in the cases you can handle? How do you handle that? Will you say that any professional who says, okay, because of my biases, I am not able to take up this kind of case, I'm focusing on this? Not that the person is saying it outrightly in the public domain, but when some issues come, the person makes referrals, whereas there are other issues that the person is more predisposed to handling. Is that a good balance in practice? I don't know if my question is clear.
Yeah, you want Kendra to answer or anybody?
Okay, let's hear Kendra, then we'll come to you, and we have Professor Jacob Chizoa here, and we have other practitioners as well who are experiencing practical things. So let's hear from Kendra. What do you think?
Oh, I think I think that in some ways we have. So if someone comes to me and they're like a staunch racist, like they don't like anybody who is from another culture, and they are specifically like they're racist, I'm probably not gonna work with them because it won't be, the therapeutic relationship won't be able to be developed, but also it won't allow my practice to remain safe, right? Because remember that there's also, I think that there's also people who can sometimes come as disruptors, and they can say, oh, I've heard Speck of Sand is doing some great things. I don't like her because she's Black, and I'm gonna come to her as a racist and try to be her client, right? But you're gonna feel, like most of the times you're gonna feel that energy, and you can say like, I can't work with you. It's almost like if somebody, I had a client the other day who was the partner of my client who's experiencing intimate partner violence or domestic abuse. The guy, he came to me and wanted to be my client. That's a conflict of interest. So I refused him, right? I don't know. I'd love to hear the other people who are on the call. I'd love to hear their perspective.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. From what you said now, there are situations where a therapist may say that, okay, I'm not able to take up this case. And there are some other cases where the client may say, you may not be able to be my therapist, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Prof, okay, thank you. Prof, want to say something about that?
Yeah, I think she's perfectly very, very right. Yeah. Because if you know you have this bias and you want to force yourself, certainly you will not be effective. You can't be effective. You won't be concentrating. You just be fake. You just be faking counseling. So the best thing is to always refer. Regardless of what you think people are going to say about you, it's better to make your stand known than to fumble, you know. So I
Okay.
think this is right, and I go along with that. You make referral. Once you
Okay.
have bias, make a referral. It doesn't make you less effective. In fact, it gives you more credibility because you don't have time fooling around with the client's lives. No.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We are on this call to interact. Actually, we have a few minutes left for this session. We plan to have it for maximum 1 hour 30 minutes. So we have barely less than 20 minutes from now. So we are all practitioners, I want to believe, on this call. We have very senior lecturers, we have very senior practitioners, we have aspiring practitioners as well. So we are talking about traversing culture. Is there anyone who would like to make any contribution, seek any clarification, or ask any question so that we keep it open? And because we are all co-learners here, whatever you say can actually be your opinion. And if there are other supporting or different opinion, we take them in that perspective. So I think we have the floor. Okay, let me not, I think we have a question on the chat box that I have not responded to. Let me quickly say, okay, I think, how can I effectively provide support to someone from a different culture who is facing a significant personal challenge considering cultural sensitivities and communication differences? Let me take it again. How can I effectively provide support to someone from a different culture who is facing a significant personal challenge considering cultural sensitivities and communication differences? I think this is the aspect of cultural biases in practice that we're talking about. I don't know if there's any direct response to this, or has it been answered in the course of the interaction?
A cultural what? I don't know, personal what? The word before person.
How can I effectively provide support to someone from a different culture who is facing a significant personal challenge considering cultural sensitivities and communication differences? This is cross-cultural approach now. So the
Yeah.
person is asking, how can I be effective? So that's the question.
But
And
there are various ways. There are various ways, like I was trying to talk about. For instance, if I'm in a different culture, a cultural setting, what I'll try to do is really to learn some of the cultures, you know, maybe like learning some of their languages, their expressions, so that when we are in the session and he or she makes some statements, I'll be able to understand exactly what that statement means. Then if this thing is a personal problem, support, we talked of organizations, we talked of leaders in a community. We can consult with the leaders, we can consult with community significant people to know more about the cultures, because if you know more about the cultures, the significant problem individuals have, you will have a better understanding. And once you have a better understanding, you'll be able to apply your skills to help this person and then support. But for instance, like in our own setting, in an African setting, we have different age groups in our various communities. We can actually work with these different age groups that this particular person belongs to understand more about the in-depth of the personality problems that the person is experiencing with the age group in that culture. That way we have a better understanding and we'll be communicating effectively with this client. You know, I think that's some of the ways we can help to support. So back to the community, we can help some people to support because we will not be there always as practitioners. So we can say, okay, this person, you know, put an eye or so, work, make sure this, that kind of support. So again, depends on the problems. If the problems are financial problems, of course, we can, if the person has no job, we can see how we can help to engage the person. So that way the person can be self-dependent.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. Now, we want to take any feedback from a practitioner. If in practice, at a particular point, you had a client and the cultural diversity almost became a difficult moment, but you were able to traverse that culture and provide help, or you had to make referral. Is there anybody who has had that experience in practice, whether internal cultural diversity within a country, or you had a client outside of your country, at the point you had to go learn, or you were not able to learn, and you had to make referral? Is there any practical experience like that, and how you're able to navigate? We're trying to get somewhere.
Maybe I could answer, maybe I could talk about one time I had a client referred to me through the police because he was a victim of domestic violence, right? So his wife, his girlfriend, like, was hitting him, right? And that's often a very hard thing for men to even identify, but it got so crazy that the neighbors called, and men don't like to identify as being victims of intimate partner violence. And so this young man, he came to me and he's like, they told me I could come to this therapy thing, but I don't know about it, but this and that. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about who you are, right? Like, tell me a little bit about what happened, about who you are. He really wasn't interested. He's like, I'm just here because they referred me and whichever, right? And then he started talking about who he was and who his mother was, and he was actually from Lagos and then lived in the States for a little bit. And by the end of the session, he's like, yo, miss, this therapy stuff, well, he didn't say stuff, is dope. And then he came back and utilized the rest of his sessions, right? But it was, we had to have a relation, like, we had to build a little bit of a relationship. And he had to figure me out, right? When I just had to listen to who he was. People love to talk about who they are, right? For the most part, right? And I had to listen and be on camera because I was doing virtual. And so that worked. And he finished the rest of his sessions that were provided to him willingly, actually paid for extras afterwards. It was interesting because this therapy stuff is dope. That's direct quote. So that's one of the things. I also see, Stanley, there's another question in the chat from Ms. Osita who said, how can we incorporate culture in our counseling practice? And I think that we should be. Mamuna, I don't know if you want to talk about this. A little bit, I'm getting the look. But I think there's always a room to incorporate culture, depending. So I'll leave the floor open for others, but I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much. Memuna Miata, you've been able to work across different cultures. And whether you're from Africa, you have clients both in the America, in Asia, in North America, across the globe. How are you able to integrate your practice to attend to the needs of clients with cultural sensitivity and diversity? Please, can we look at that? Then I can see a comment by Miata as well. So also consent is key. For example, when dealing with Muslims, you can ask if they prefer certain gender therapists. Of course, gender is an issue, culture is an issue, religion is an issue, all those. So I think that is a very good point to make. So Miata, Memona, and we have other practitioners. Please forgive me if I'm not mentioning your name directly. We have, I think we have Professor Tujo Jacob, we have Cletus, we have Dr. Kennedy, Dr. Margaret. We have a number of people who are practitioners. So how do we handle this? So we're trying to round up in the next few minutes. Just share with us, how have you been able to practice without domesticating practice? You are able to function as a global citizen and transverse of culture. How do you manage to do that practically?
I think for me the most, because I have clients from Asia. Something that I don't understand, I'll let you know. I'm just genuine, authentic, and honest. Tell me a bit more about this. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. I don't know about this. Tell me how it works with your culture. Just being honest that you don't know is the first thing, rather than me faking it like, oh yeah, I know, oh yeah, but you really don't know. Just be honest about it. Learn from the clients, ask questions so you're more in tune with what their values and what their culture is. And that has worked
Wow.
for me. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So you learn about your culture and you structure your intervention in line with your cultural um, beliefs, right? Oh, that's actually wonderful. Tell me more about your culture. I want to learn about you. If I'm going to help you, I'm going to help you in context of what is acceptable within your culture,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. And it's not
Wow,
like they're
wow.
there to teach me about their culture. It's not like it's an educative session for me. So I'm not going to take away therapeutic time for them to teach me, but I'll make
Okay,
it known that I'm not familiar. Please enlighten me a bit more.
okay.
Yeah, because sometimes
Oh,
you don't
oh.
really want them to use a therapy session as a time to teach you. No, because
Yeah,
they're
I get it.
for their feelings and the issues. But if you're not familiar with something, just make it known. I don't know. I'm not sure. And that's
Hmm.
fine.
Very, very true, very true, very true, very true. I think that is actually important. Professor Chujo Jacob, please, I don't know if you have anything to say. Permit me if I'm not calling particular names. I just had to call. Professor Chujo Jacob here. You want to say something, sir? Okay. If anyone else has something to say, quickly as we try to round up on this session. Miata, you want to share experience on how you navigate as well?
I'm sorry, I joined it late, so I don't know what has been said, and so I don't want to repeat what's already been said. However, we also need to remember that there are cultures within cultures, and so sometimes it's like as practitioners, with what Mimuna was saying previously, is if you don't know, ask questions, because it's so easy for us to make assumptions, from what we've seen, of what we've learned, or and yeah, just ask. There's no shame in asking. And then when client tells you, then you go and then educate yourself so that you're better prepared when you meet them the next time. So it's a mutual relationship. It's give and take. So you are both learning from each other. From what Kendra said about the client that came and he wasn't sure about it, but because she made it so easy and so comfortable for him, he was able to come back, and it was a safe space. So I think sometimes we need to get out of our own head and out of our own way to be able to practice effectively.
Thank you very much, Miata, for that wonderful contribution. We want to take just one or two more contribution and we'll be done for tonight after the brief announcement. So any other person, if you can indicate. I can see Dr. Margaret Kennedy, the mic is on.
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. Everything is discussed in line with what I had in mind. But this transversing culture is not an easy task, although like in Nigerian context, we deal with multicultural issues. For instance, in Rivers State, we have over 20 cultures. Let me just put it conservatively like that. We have over 20 cultures. So working within these 20, within the limits of these 20 cultures, when a client comes, it's a great challenge and it requires a lot of wisdom. Just as Mona shared, at least, you have to ask questions, ask the clients, so that he can tell you his limits, limitations, and what he expects from you, instead of you to just encroach on his privacy. I remember a child was brought to me, and after I finished with the child, I was tempted to pray for the child, to pray with the child, but I now asked, are you a Christian? Which church do you attend? He said it's of the Jehovah's Witness. So at that point, I have to restrain myself because I know that kind of thing will not be tolerated. So it's a good one. You have to actually ask the client so that you don't trespass. That's my own take.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We can say that there are multi-dimensional approach in practice. In the West, there are very strict rules where religion is completely isolated from therapy practice, and to a very large extent, except you get to really find out, therapies are very less personal when they are in session. So it's possible you don't know anything about the therapist background, marital status, and all that. But here, most times in Africa, people want to find out who you are, where you are, your background. They want to even interact with you. If you are particular religion, are you ordained? Are you not ordained? And all those stories. But from all that we have said now, I can say that we must know that there are limits. And the moment you cross the limits, you have actually done something unethical. And when you do something unethical, in a very structured environment, professional misconduct are sanctioned with strict sanctions. So we are not just on this call to continue to just talk. We're on this platform to understand that there is domestication of practice. And then within the particular culture, for example, in Nigeria, I just want to say this as an overview, as a roundup. Within Nigeria, there is this hasty generalization about the North being Hausas. And then we try to see everyone in the North from an Hausa cultural background. But when you really enter into the North, you realize that there are a number of different cultures that exist in the North, that there is even an internal colonization of the smaller cultures. But when you get to the individuals in those smaller cultures, you come to realize that there are diversities in this. So when someone walks into the North, you want to counsel a Northerner, you just assume that, oh, a Northerner has this general orientation, whereas it is just the majority that have dominated the minority, and you are in session with the minority. So the need to really be open is something that we're willing to work on. In every state in Nigeria, you have what they call the major tribes and the minor tribes. Within Nigeria as a country, we talk about the Wazobias and Lucasip and many others. So I think this sensitivity in practice is something that we need to really look at. I'll just try to read the text that are sent in, and then we'll just make an announcement and also see how we can wind up. Okay, we'll talk about genuineness, and then okay, Miata said she was just about to talk about religion and being sensitive to religion, which is what Dr. Margaret had just said. Also, intercultural and interreligious intelligence are germane in cross-cultural counseling. This is because it is difficult to separate them from the culture of the people. That's true. Religion, ethnic affiliations, and all that, they are difficult to separate. Okay, Miata as well saying because sometimes religion is a trigger for clients. So some people come for session when you tell them you are trying to use psychological means, they let them know that I understand my problem. My problem is more spiritual than you think. So people come with different diverse approaches. So we are in this together because the narrative about having global practice where as a professional, you can attend to clients beyond your locality using the online space. And then if you're going to set up practice using the online space and you have a client outside of your cultural orientation and you want to use your own cultural orientation to plan intervention, definitely over time, the online space has a way of reporting someone. Over time, you just discover that the clients are no longer coming in because one unsatisfied client has raised an issue, and before you know it, you flagged out. So quickly, I think the one last one, please. I just take one last one. I see the Galaxy M11, whose end is up. We'll just take your feedback and then we'll take a final take home from this meeting.
Yeah, good evening, all.
Good evening. Your name,
Yes,
please.
my name is Alice Abang. I'm Alice Abang from Nigeria. I'm a school owner in Nigeria, Lagos State in Nigeria. Stanley, please, I am happy for this seminar tonight. I have a parent that I invited over to school to meet with me tomorrow. It's about this religion. This when we talk about cultural diversity, traversing these cultures. This religion is what we are facing in schools a lot. For instance, this particular case, these parents came in, is now criticizing, is arguing about choosing black as a color in the school, choosing black color in the school. So when I heard of it, already she came in and already has caused trouble in the school, but the head teacher was able to put everything under control. They called me. I tried to reach her on phone, I couldn't. I now invited her over. When I checked what happened, she said that we cannot choose black as a color because the children want to have a function, their end of their party. So black is one of the colors they chose. She said no, because her child said so. Please, how do I handle such parents? Because I was actually praying and I was going to get back to you, discuss this with Stanley. So I now said, yes, when I have this, how am I going to handle, how am I going to discuss this matter with her tomorrow? Because she's already on appointments.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
You mean a leading question to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. The colors chosen for the event, is it just black?
No, not just black.
Okay, it's simple then. When she come, maybe she has an issue with that color, that particular color. So it's to ask her the color she prefers, so the child can be put into that particular color. Because you see, parents are the greatest assets we have. One parent can flood in students into your school. And one parent can also make every parent exit from your school. So we have to be very sensitive. And we have to be very sensitive when we are dealing with them. So find out the color you would prefer a child to be. Then it's a simple game. You just transfer the child to that house or to that color.
Okay.
Tell her, just tell her that you understand that feeling, that some people are not just too comfortable with a particular color, even anything, food or anything. People are not familiar or maybe particularly interested in some things. So maybe these are own parts. She doesn't like the color black. It's as simple as that. So just transfer the child and apologize to her. You don't have to impose that color on a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I think that can actually have there are so many things to it. It's either the parent doesn't want the child to wear the color, or the parents think that there is something fishy about the color, even if others are wearing it. So those are the sensitive issues to look into. But with what we have said now, there are sensitivities. Some parents just feel that as far as others are wearing it and you are not pulling back down that color, it means you have something in mind already and she's willing to fight it. There are people who attribute black to certain cults. And depending on certain localities as well, in certain localities, it's a means of identification in certain localities. So it depends on the locality, I think, and we need to really be sensitive to our environment. Some maybe innocently, we may just be doing it as a school innocently, but that locality may have that as a flag, as a means of identity, and some people will just bank on the students and say, we saw your uniform, we thought you were part of us, depending on the locality. So I think environment is a very sensitive aspect in all of this.
Then, please, does that mean, will this be enough reason for this reason? Can we say that as a school, we can no longer choose this color because we still have that parent around, if we have need for that color?
Okay. I think there is more to this because of the session that we are having now. We will just try and round off, but there may be more to this. There is a lot of environmental factor. There is an internal factor within the parent herself. There are factors within the child. There are factors within the school. If we want to look into all those factors, our time for this session is actually up already. So
okay,
please,
since I'm inviting her over, I'll find out those facts, and Stanley, I'll get back to you.
Okay, no problem. Just for the purpose of this session.
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so
thank you.
A quick one, just 2 persons. What is the major take home from this session that we have had? Are we just come to spend 1 hour, 30 minutes plus? Is there any benefit in terms of how we enhance our practice, areas that we can work on subsequently? Just 2 persons, please. Is there anything we can do better?
Okay, just a quick one.
For me is that
okay. Okay, Dr. Kennedy, you can go on, please.
Okay, I said just a quick one. I meant to understand that coming from a different culture from my client does not hinder me from helping him or her. Despite the fact that I'm from a different culture from my client, I can still do much to help her out, accepting her unconditionally, genuinely, and trying to ask questions to clarify our boundaries and all that. I can actually help. So culture is not a limitation to our giving help to clients.
Exactly. So they are cultural-based practice and they are evidence-based practice. So what the focus of what we're looking at is evidence-based practice that transcends culture. Just like people have a reaction to certain drugs, but there are certain drugs that have no adverse reaction. So evidence-based practice is humanity in consideration, irrespective of cultural background. We're able to apply it generally, I think. So thank you very much, Dr. Margaret, for that. Ladi Felix, the last person, and then we'll quickly try to round up.
Okay,
Ladi.
good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for this beautiful session. I think my take home really is the fact that as counselors, we shouldn't say, never say never. These things are things that face us every now and then. But then, one of the things I really have learned now is when you are even faced with situations like that, you should see it as a learning point. You are patient enough to ask your client how he will want to be served, especially learning from him. I remember someone said, I think it's Memuna that said, being very honest and asking the client questions. In that way, you are also learning. And who knows, you might have a client that has similar culture, and then you have already gained knowledge from the previous client that you have already learned from. So I feel like it's something that we shouldn't run away from, and it's something that we should embrace, especially since we are looking at, a global picture. Okay, global picture. So you can be in Nigeria and have clients all over the world. So it's an opportunity to learn cultures, opportunity to learn ways of life, which we add to your knowledge, existing knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ladi. I think the summary is that therapy is not a cultural service. Cultural is just a dimension in practice. Counseling is not a religious service. Religion is just an aspect of it. Culture is not a racial service, but race sometimes come into play. So whether we are attending to an African, whether you are attending to European, whether you are attending to an Asian, humanity, problems are peculiar, and there are specific approaches that help people to know that, yes, you have actually gotten to the root of the challenge and you are in the best position to help me. No matter the level of degree, whether first degree, master's, PhD, whether one is a professor, in practice, just like Miata said some time ago, sometimes theory don't apply 100% in practice. What works is what works. And that's why in the West, you see people develop different intervention techniques, EDMR, the CBT, and so many things. So I think as practitioners, being open to different approach to helping our clients is key. So on this note, I want to appreciate all who have made our time to be here on this call tonight. Kendra, thank you very much for taking our time to share with us tonight. Memuna Stephen, thank you very much. Aban from Lagos, thank you. Dr. Margaret Kennedy, thank you. Adio Abdul Gafar Alafara, please forgive me for that. Thank you. Agbaje Aishat, Ambassador Priscilla, and Professor Chuzo Jacob, Dr. Cletus Akaba, Kendra Mills, Kennedy MI, Coach Collington Simon, who is a counselor by association, Ladi Velis, Mary Miata, Obeta, everyone, please, we are all appreciated. Next Sunday, something is going to be happening. Specifically, that is the masterclass series of our counselorpreneurship session, where we're going to be focusing on authority positioning, identity discovery, where as a therapist, you can actually be identified with particular solution where you don't have to be a generalist, but so many factors come into play in identifying your positioning. In addition, the area of training is, of course, a major criteria in professionalism, but in addition to professional trainings, there are other individual and internal and external factors that come into place in practice. Hopefully by next Sunday, as many who on this call who can also make it available, who can be available next Sunday, we look forward to having a wonderful session. Thank you very much for your time. I'm glad to have you on this call. Kendra, any final word from you? Just 1 minute.
Stanley's learned. I talk a lot. Thank you. I just want to say I feel honored to be here with you folks tonight, sharing space. There's so much knowledge in the room. I can't wait to get to know you folks a little better. And who knows, maybe we'll see you sooner than later. Thank you. I appreciate all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're glad to have you. And Prof, thank you very much for your time and for your contribution tonight. And thank you, everyone. Memona Stephen, thank you, our host from Canada. We appreciate you. Miata, everyone, thank you very much. And have a blessed
Thank
night.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Professor Chujo Jacob, I was hoping to hear your voice, but I don't know if you are still there. We have stopped recording. We're actually logging out now.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night.